first. Sorry about that.
Just so everyone's aware.
Just so we can share this with Chris, who's our only team member who's not here in person or on Zoom today, Chris Widener. And so he's traveling, but might join in by Zoom. But I actually thought I would start out with some scripture. So if you would hand me one of those agendas, on the back of the agenda, or if you guys on Zoom scroll down on the agenda link in the email, I'm going to keep this Zoom view up though, so we can see faces while we're talking for now rather than share screen. But I added to the bottom of it the scripture from 1 Corinthians to kind of frame our time, and then I'll open us in a prayer. So it says, Paul writes to the early church in Corinth, "For when one says, I belong to Paul, and another, I belong to Apollos, are you not merely human? What then is Apollos? What then is Paul? Servants or ministers, through whom you came to believe, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. The one who plants and the one who waters have a common purpose, and each will receive wages according to the labor of each. For we are God's servants working together. You are God's field, God's building. According to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation. Someone else is building on it. Each builder must choose with care how to build on it. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one that has been laid. That foundation is Jesus Christ." Let's pray together. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Also with you.
Thank you. God, you laid this foundation here at this church, and it's been here over 250 years through different seasons and all different people. And now we start a new season, and we begin with this team with excitement, ready to listen and to plan, to dream, and to hear your calling for who you call us to be. So I give thanks for this amazing group of people who have said yes to being on this team, to our work together, to open ears and hearts to you and your people, even when it's hard. Lead us on, Lord, in this work. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely. Moving right along, I wanted to make sure that we actually set some time aside for introductions and an icebreaker question, because I think that while I've definitely seen all these faces around church and I'm happy to see them again, I know some more well than others. So we want to make sure that along with doing the work of mission planning, we actually get to know each other in fellowship and communion a little bit better. So to that end, please, let's go around and figure out how to incorporate that. And have your name, how long you've been at GLC, and then you have a choice of icebreakers, because I hate to be put on the spot. Either what is your favorite liturgical season, or what is your go-to potluck dish for church? So I'll start. My name is Abby Warshevsky. I have been at GLC since my senior year in college, so that was 2012 is when I started coming, so it's been 10 years. And my favorite liturgical season is actually Lent, because I think it has the best music.
Me?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm Pastor Rhett. It's this at the end of August. It'll be 5 years for me here at GLC, called as pastor, and those were the only two things, right? Mm-hmm. And then, trying to think if I have a go-to potluck dish. I don't know. Lately, I've really been liking Advent as a church season because the waiting part, and it likewise has some good music that often gets skipped in favor of Christmas music. So I like that. Joseph, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Joseph. I've been at GLC like two and a half years, end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And when I was little, we would always bring desserts to potlucks at church, so like
You're very
brownies
popular.
or something. So that would probably be my go-to.
Okay, I'm Katrin. I came to GLC first in summer 2018. Yes, and I stuck to it. So it's been a while, although I want to jump back to Germany. And since when I came to DC, the pandemic struck, I haven't really been to a church potluck, so I have to figure out what I would like to have and what I would like to bring. So yeah, and this year I really came to like Easter because of how excited you were for the Easter vigil, and yeah, it's the spring and the land and the joy. So I really came to like that, to have become that, to get that as my favorite.
I'm Chris Trugat, the other Chris, and I started coming to GLC in the autumn of 1989, so I'm not going to do the math, but it's been a minute. I'm on Alter Guild, so I just like the fact that we mark with the changes of seasons, and it's I even do this in my own home. I have different runners on my table depending on the season. It doesn't actually match the pyramids, but I think my favorite season is probably Advent, because first of all, I love the compliments that Suzanne gave us. They're absolutely beautiful. And just that season of anticipation.
John or Michael, would either of you go next?
Say again?
We've gone around the table of those in person. Would either John or
Okay,
Michael?
I'll start. I'm John Jolfs. I've been at Georgetown since I guess 1975, so that'd be like 47 years. And actually, my favorite season, everybody's sort of what a few other people have said, it's Advent. Because it would probably be Christmas, but I'm never here for Christmas. I'm always traveling. I go visit my sister over Christmas. So I think Advent, when I'm because I'm at the church, I get to see the church decorations, and it's the anticipation and the things that we do for Advent. So I guess that would be my favorite season. And for a potluck dish, if I can remember to make it, there's a tuna casserole I make it.
That's a good one.
Michael.
I'm Michael Sonnenberg. I've been at GLC since 2021. I think it's 2021, yeah. And my favorite liturgical season is just the ordinary time, because there's some pretty cool gospel readings in the ordinary time lectionary. And it's kind of a time where people don't really give a lot of emphasis to. So I think ordinary time, like season after Pentecost, is my favorite.
Cool. Thank you. Well, thank you. Please expect that each meeting will have some new little silly question to get to know each other better and just to loosen up before we start talking the very, very serious business of church mission. So for the rest of this, there's an agenda. I have some guiding questions. I have some points I want to make. But please at any point interrupt me or raise hands or whatever, so that if you have questions or you want to like get clarification on something I say, we can talk about it. I'm seeing this particular meeting as like a session 0 for this group of, we're not going to make any progress towards the strategic plan today. We're really just getting to know what we're all here to do and start thinking about what the process will look like. So our baseline questions, why are we doing this at all? So I have been on our GLC council since 2017. Yeah. And so this is partway through my second term, and council has gotten, in my 5 years, a lot more thoughtful about what projects we take on to hopefully be more proactive in looking out for issues than reactive in waiting for something to break, which is great. It's a sign of a healthy church for a number of reasons. And while the council has their own retreat once a year where they come up with goals of what they want to accomplish in the next year, we also have tried to maintain a focus on how to bring in non-council congregation members, people who may not want to be on like that businessy side of the church, but should hopefully, and we encourage, take a more leadership position within the congregation. So this year, based on discussions and thoughts and reflections, we thought it's a great time to put together a strategic plan for the church. This will be something that is larger in scope than like the 1-year council goals, but we're not going all the way to like a 10 or 20-year capital improvement visioning process, which some churches are able to do. So this is very much in theme with trying to be proactive, trying to raise up new voices, trying to look and forecast a little bit about what's coming down the pike for the church. And the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that, getting to the second question here, it is a unique time for Georgetown Lutheran. We are, Chris, you can back me up on this, we are financially stable in a way that we hadn't been for many, many years. Things are good. We don't have to be in crisis mode. We don't have to be relying on the same 6 or 7 people who do everything. We have a congregation member in Crystal who's going off to seminary, which I don't know if we've ever had a seminarian in the congregation.
It's been some time.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
And Michael came to us as a seminarian, finishing, but it's been a long time since we've launched one.
Yeah.
We had one when Pastor Wagner was here. I can't remember her name. She was
So we have a member starting their ordination journey. Pastor Brett is planning on, and the council is supporting her on taking a sabbatical next summer, which will also be a moment for the church to support her financially and just in all the other ways of coverage for an extended period of time. And that's all before we say that we are, I'm not going to say done with, we are weathering a pandemic, and we have done it well, which has also brought new challenges and opportunities. We've been seeing new people, we've been seeing new ways of engaging. So it has been a thoughtful process of bringing about some need for longer range visioning. So those are my reasons for why we're doing this now, but if you had any others of like, why are we strategic planning instead of just doing a renovation project or just starting up a new program or anything like that? I think it was important in ideating this project that the strategic plan be fairly narrow in scope in terms of like, we're not trying to take on everything, but that it's broad enough that since it is for 5 years, council or the congregation or interested members could answer like, how do you achieve that vision in a couple of ways. So we want some amount of flexibility, like otherwise it's just a task list. We want to rehang the bell. That's not a strategic plan mission.
Right.
Those are my initial thoughts. And then why this group of people? While there was a nomination process through the council to try to intentionally balance years of attendance, perspective that they're coming with, it was somewhat just, we wanted to get new voices in the space, and we thought that this would be a great time to bring in a bunch of people who may not have been on council before, or on, like, we had a vision team 4 years ago.
Right.
But I want to stop speaking for a moment. And despite the nomination process and the invitation process, I wanted to ask each of you, what are you excited to bring to this table, either from your personal background, professional background, your hopes for the church? Like, why did you say yes?
Well, I guess I'll start, because I was reluctant to join anything else. I just have got some other stuff going on, just took a step back from council. But strategic planning is actually in my wheelhouse. That's what I used to do professionally when I was at Booz Allen Hamilton. And I think the sign of a healthy organization is one that is doing some forward thinking and not just being reactive and waiting for stuff to happen. So I'm excited that we're at the point where we're not just reacting to the latest crisis, and that we can take a minute as a collective and start thinking about what do we want this church to be. And John, Jules, I think you can attest to this better than I can, but our demographics have changed significantly in the time that I've been here. I mean, when I started here in 1989, I was by far the youngest person, I mean, like decades, the youngest person that was going to church here. There were a handful of students from Georgetown and American University, but the vast majority of the congregants at that time were retirees. And it's nice to come into church in the morning, and now I'm the old person. Not that I'm sad that I'm old, I'm not, but it's nice to come in and see, you know, young faces and people who are interested and engaged and want to be a part of our different missions. And that is bucking the trend of other Protestant churches, that, you know, Protestant mainstream churches. And I think that's exciting, and we're doing something right. So I want to continue on that path.
Yeah, I was really honored when I realized that I had been invited, because I've been thinking about what I could do to support the community. I love this community very much, and I'm very excited because I know German churches, they're full of very old people like my parents, octogenarians. This is a word I learned, so I'm using that. Octogenarian. No, because Easter Sunday, when I saw how excited people were, they brought their kids, they brought their grandchildren and everything. So that's what I really like about this community, and I haven't figured out yet what I personally can do, but I'm very much fond of strategic planning. I've done that as a journalist and during my academic education, so I'm full of ideas. So, but I have to figure out what specifically I can do to help this community. But I'd love to.
I think the church, I grew up in the LCMS, not the ELCA. The church I grew up in is essentially about to close. And so I agree a lot with sort of the way that GLC is just very different church in general than what I've experienced before. And then as a student, I think a lot of times the only way I feel I can support is like with time or like with my physical presence. And so when I received the invitation, I saw this as an opportunity to continue to support a community that I feel has supported me in a lot of ways and that I've just felt very welcomed in.
I really like strategic planning, and I've done it with other congregations, but the part that I'm really excited about is like the mission side of it. So like the dreaming and landing on what is going to be like the word or image, or kind of playing with that stuff. And so there might be people on our team here who bring, like, you guys are a really amazing, talented, and interesting group of people. And picture Chris Widener also sitting at the table with us, because he's our only one missing. And we're going to bring different perspectives. And some people have like structural skills or really good experience in some of these practical areas, and others will be great dreamers as well. So I'm excited about both sides of the coin. Michael, I'm curious what you think.
I was hesitant to take this on. One, I just bought a house with my husband, so we've got a lot going on with that. And but I'm given the circumstances of this past week, I'm excited about this now. I'm excited to be involved with a new journey, and to help GLC grow and flourish into a thriving congregation that it used to be.
John?
Okay, well, a few years ago, I participated when we did the 250th. I was like on the on the history team that wrote the history. And before that, I hadn't really been, for a long time, I've actually, if you do the math, I've been a member of this church for a significant portion of that history. And I've observed the changes that Chris talked about. And one of the things, if you read that book, we divided the life of the church into 4 stages, and the last stage was the transition from kind of an inward church that was devoted to the care of its members to something that was more outreach into the community. And I think we've really kind of completed that transition. I think, as Chris noted, the demographics have changed. The view of our role in the community is changed. And so I thought this was a good time to kind of get involved. From like late 70s through the mid 90s, I was on the church council for, I think, all but 2 years, and then I had another 11-year stint. So I didn't want to get involved in the governance of the church. I've served my time, but I think this is a good project to kind of refocus our efforts into what we want to be for the kind of the next age or the next segment of the history of this church. And the church itself, I think, if the location, the people that we have, I think there's a whole range of possibilities. Frankly, the other churches, sometimes when I'm home, I attend the church I grew up in, and they're boring by comparison. I mean, this is an exciting church, and it has great possibilities. So this was I thought about it because originally because I thought I should be getting back into it, but I think there's a lot of this. And this committee could have a huge impact on where we go from here.
Thank you. So with all of that said, what are we doing? Not just why are we doing it, but what are we doing here? I wanted to start, there's this ominous sounding ground rules here. This is a practice back from my days of being in front of classrooms a lot, of setting some expectations at the outset so that you can be aware of how you operate as a group. The first one that I want to say is, while I am happy to take lead on the administrative stuff of reporting back to council, making agendas, sharing materials, emailing people, my voice and Pastor Brett's voice are no more valid or powerful than anyone's. So leading is more of a thing I've taken on for just making sure that things go through the process. But I wanted to be very clear that, like, just because this is my project, it is not my strategic plan. It is not Pastor Brett's strategic plan. It is the strategic plan for GLC.
It's Jesus's plan for GLC. Yeah. And it's all of yours to speak up about. Yeah.
Yes. I am very comfortable if someone wants to say, like, I don't agree, or I think that that's not the right tack we should take, or you're not thinking of this other consideration. I have a habit of just kind of talking until someone stops or I run out of words. So at any point, please feel free to interrupt me, but probably we should have a way of not interrupting each other. I think also most of our meetings will be completely over Zoom, so it'll be a lot easier to use like raise hand or note of like I have something to say. That's thing number one. Thing number two on ground rules is that it's important for all of us to remember that this is not a work project. I am not your supervisor. Pastor Brett is not your supervisor. Even Jesus is not really your supervisor. There's
It's also not a class project. Yeah. It's not a seminary project.
We're not getting graded.
Fail. Yeah.
We're not getting graded. I do expect we're all very capable, driven adults, so if there's something like we have agreed to read through X and Y chapter or to make some reflections on that, one reminder will go out, 6 individual reminders will not go out. Because if we have any hope of actually doing this in the midst of our otherwise very busy lives, there has to be some form of expectation, shared expectation that the work will get done jointly.
And we will have homework
Yeah.
together, but we can step up and volunteer for the pieces that you can do. And because this is going to be a few to several month, project that we're doing, there may be months when like I'm out of pocket in half of June, and Abby, but like other times, other people, we're gonna take on what we can and step up. So
To the point about being out of pocket, it is unrealistic to say that all 8 of us will be on all meetings. I think it's much more likely that we will have all 8 people involved in like emails and shared documents and making comments and such when available. But it is my full expectation that most meetings will have probably like 5-ish people as available.
Right.
And I'm going to try to keep the meetings to somewhat of a moderate amount, if only because I find that if you make the time, you really need something that you want to discuss, not just like, what did you think of the reading we did? Like,
Meeting for the sake of meeting.
meeting for the sake of meeting is not a great way to do it, especially over the summer, especially with this many people. So just from a process note, expect more reading, reflecting, and commenting on your own time, or updating things that you take on in some kind of like asynchronous tracker, rather than meeting. We're going to meet every week on Wednesday night. No, not going to happen. Not realistic. Not a good way to make progress.
And as I think we said by email, we might meet once a month or twice a month as we get closer to a product or something like that.
But those I think will very much more be focused on like, we're meeting because we're doing this workshop thing together, or we're meeting because we have a couple drafts of the mission that we want to like pitch and bounce ideas off of. So they will always have a purpose. And finally, to some extent, I want to be honest that we are making this up as we go along. There are guiding documents, the materials, there are examples we can follow, there are a number of things, but it's not like we are working off of one rigid template or like, plan that some consultant has come up with.
No.
So I and Pastor Brett and really the whole group should be fairly flexible in what is achievable and appropriate for this church. There are some things that you can do that might be more valuable to a church that's just starting out, and that resource may not call it out, and you can actually say like, I don't think we need this. We have been here for 250 years. Or maybe we're looking at an example strategic plan for a 500, 600 person church, and it will look different than ours. So as we go through this, staying a little bit open to changing along the way based on what we feel is most suitable to where GLC is and who we are. Because I think that the materials will be helpful to give ideas, but not to be followed very directly. Those are my ground rules. Does anyone else have ideas of how this group should operate, any fears they had of taking this project on, anything like that to say as a group?
I just want to underscore that it's okay to disagree thing, and that part of our work together will be also listening to the congregation and the community. And that may mean receiving negative feedback and receiving things that you don't agree with and reporting them back to the team, or holding those things in tension. And I think we can all do that well, but it just, these processes, sometimes, we have to bring that to the table and be unafraid of conflict. But I think you guys bring some strengths in that, so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next,
Should we talk about what we're gonna do?
Yeah.
Timetable and what
Timetable
we're actually doing?
And
product.
I call it minimum viable product. This is just a term from my
Yeah,
organization background, which is basically like what is needed to pass. There's all sorts of things
we
could
said we
come
weren't
up with.
gonna fail, but yes,
We're not gonna
Right.
fail, but
Right.
but like there's
Yeah, what's the goal here? What are we
yeah,
going
there's a
for?
whole host of things that could be done.
Yeah.
We could come up with goals for years 1 through 5, and a branding package, and a new logo, and new signage for everything, and no. So
We might get started on some of those things.
or have ideas for these.
Yeah, and we may, so I think, as I think about it, and council has talked about it, Abby and I have met to talk about some of these things, there's kind of two strands to this. There's the mission aspect, kind of thinking about clarifying that and being able to have that phrase or elevator sentence about where we are and who we are and where we're headed. And then the other piece is the specific goals and coming up with that approximately 5-year strategic plan, which probably is a written product that is reasonable in scope and may not have a high level of detail, because that's going to be what the council and other leaders carry out in the specifics in the years to come, but gives us a roadmap for that kind of
So I would say it's likely that our written product will be a document of more than 2 but less than 12 pages of description and like a starting thing of how we came to this, what was followed, something
what
that
we
could be-
heard, yeah.
what we heard, that could be delivered to both the council first and then to the full congregation. I believe, and I've been challenged on this, that the strategic plan needs to be accepted by the congregation. And that's why I put this tentative date of timeline as presenting it in some fashion at our congregational meeting, which typically happens in November. That is coming up.
Ambitious.
Yeah,
Ambitious.
ambitious,
And
yeah.
here's the thing, I've had this conversation with someone already. I think putting a date on it is important because it is motivating. Now, if we get to October and we've done really, really good work and we're proud of it, but it's just not ready by November, that's fine. It is not important to me whether it happens
Yeah. And we
exactly November 14th versus maybe push it to after Christmas, because it's more important to have the right strategic plan than one that we've just rushed along.
Right.
But I didn't want to open it up as we're doing this before she goes on
Right,
sabbatical, because then it's really hard to find the momentum
Which is
of
a year
actually reading and holding conversations, because there's always more time later. So I don't want anyone to be concerned that we will have failed if we don't have a fully fleshed out strategic plan and mission statement
by the
by
annual meeting.
the end of annual meeting. But I think it's important to have it in your mind that we will, so that we actually do things.
I work best on a deadline, and yeah, and I think you have those professionally, but yeah, and it's I think if we are in that spot in October, then we're going to be at least able to give a preview to the congregation, and we will be giving updates along the way about the process and what we're doing together, and they're going to be involved in the process. And so to get there, if I can add in, to get there, then the timetable, our work together, we were just talking, kind of involves a significant, probably majority of our work will be listening, research, and kind of working that out together. So doing some congregational and community listening and surveying, those kind of things, conversations, whether that comes in the form of town halls or meetings, and how that works. Figure that, and then compiling all that to then synthesize it into some work together.
Yeah. So, a significant portion, if not a majority, will be data collection in some form or another. But I think as we have those sessions and we share the feedback that we hear and we share the results of surveys,
I'm in a Zoom meeting right now.
to emerge, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Themes will emerge, will come to some kind of clarifying statements, so that hopefully when that phase is done, the actual structuring and writing, I don't think it will take that long.
Yeah.
Especially if we do not let ourselves get bogged down in wordsmithing, which is
Yeah. and
my pet
processes.
peeve. Others may be better at it, they may have better words, but I tend to be like, this works, let's run with it for now.
Yeah, and processes I've been involved with, once we get to that, and if we do some thoughtful and prayerful and faithful work, listening to, then those themes will bubble up, and the work piece, can go from there. What questions do you have?
And I like the idea of going out and having kind of town hall meetings and talking to people.
Yeah.
That'll be great, than just sitting together and spreading something.
Yeah.
I also want to say at the outset that we are not, this is actually a somewhat larger group than we were expecting. We were happily surprised that our first round of invitations all accepted, so thank you all for that.
You were all our first choice, and
Yeah.
everyone said yes.
So we ended up with a slightly larger group than expected, which is fabulous. But even outside of these 8 people, we are supported by a large number of other people in the congregation. The council has this group's full support. There are various other, I don't like using the word key, but very engaged members of the church. So as we start planning
Who have
out,
offered to help, like coordinate
Yeah.
some pieces of this, or lead a town hall, or help with practical.
had ideas of what to do. So I think as we start formulating this into an actual plan with actual events, keep in mind, to that same theme of raising up new people in the congregation and a variety of people in the congregation, keep in mind where there might be a chance to have like one member of this team and a second co-hosting something who may not be on it. Because first of all, that'll make scheduling easier. And second, it's good to be much more transparent with the congregation about this is not, these sessions are not closed, these processes are not supposed to be private, and we want to hear from a lot more people. So fully open to co-leads or one-off guest star, like all of those things are good. So I don't know if that has covered the what are we called to do?
Can I share just
Please.
a little bit of this document?
Please.
I'm gonna try and pull this up. This might take me a second to get to the right place. Shoot, not that one. Hold on a second. Okay. I might have to come back to that because I don't have it pulled up on this computer. But in the folder for our background reading from here, which we'll talk about at the end here, there's a chapter from this book. It's very short. It's just a few pages, and it kind of sets a framework for our work together. And so we'll touch on what this means, but they have it gives some guidelines. So it says the tasks of strategic planning are 4 specific areas. 1, listening and discerning. And so that's all the kind of community work too that we had talked about. And then from that, themes may bubble up that help us create a mission statement or a mission clarifying piece, and then goals based on that mission statement, and then an action plan from there, which would be our strategic plan. And this just also frames it in some helpful churchy things, because like Abby said, you may have done this kind of work with work or groups or organizations or school, but their number 1 tip in here is, number 1, keep the process simple and steeply deeped in prayer. Make sure God is invited and involved in every step of the process. They say give the team a name, like Dream Team.
No one liked it when I called the last
No,
one
I
Vision
know.
Quest.
You called the last one Vision Quest. I don't know that we need a name, but I think raising enthusiasm, keeping our, communicating out to the congregation, we're going to share that you guys are the team and going from there. So we'll dive more into this later, but that's there, and I encourage you to take a look. So that kind of distills where we're going in a framework.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one of the ground rules from earlier. My apologies. We know different people in the congregation. We have different people we're closer to, or which service we attend, or how we attend. So once we have kind of introduced this group to the congregation through email or letter or raising your hand in worship, please stay open to someone coming up to you and saying, like, I have an idea or a question about the team. We want to make sure that the 8 of us are visible, welcoming presences to members and visitors who may have those thoughts and feedback, because structured feedback is always great, but being open to like the knocking into someone at coffee hour and having a 5-minute conversation about the process is also going to be very beneficial to us. So I forgot that one.
So, can I go on to the next section then? Going on that, then we thought we would start today with just a really simple brainstorming. What are we called to do? Well, we talked about the actual like process. What are we gonna try and do? But what do you think God calls us to do? And like, what do you think God calls GLC to do? And these could be, we're gonna do some things that are very structured. We're gonna do other things that are just completely blue sky brainstorming. And this is that. So I like to tell planning teams that this is also where bad ideas come to die, and that you need to put them all on the table, and that also we're going to save these brainstorming things. And that's why part of why we wanted to do one today is because there might be some like words or things that keep coming up or become a part of our process together here. So the question is, God calls us, meaning GLC, or it could just be us as Christians or us as people in the world. God calls, but probably specifically GLC is our work to do here. God calls us to blank. And what is that? And what I'm going to do is write it on this computer. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna write it in there. And so let me think about some words and maybe multiple words or phrases. And I'm gonna write it. And maybe, yeah, like someone in the room is doing, maybe write it on your agenda for a second and take a moment to think. God calls us to blank. One or more things there. And then we'll share them out. Again, no bad answers, not at this point. God calls us to what? Or to be what? Like, I'll answer that, however. Another couple seconds, and then we'll just start calling them out. A word or phrase, not a whole story yet, although save those for later. God calls GLC to what? Ready? What do you got?
Love.
Worship.
Be present.
To be community.
I'll add serve.
Work.
Did you say work, John?
Yeah, work.
Work.
I have care for the congregation, care for the community, and for people around us.
Care for the congregation,
Congregation, yeah,
people
congregation, I
around.
think it's better, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
and for people.
Be honest.
Be honest.
Proclaim the gospel.
To exist outside, like the pews or the church walls.
Mm. Any other things?
Meet people where they are. I don't know if there are fewer words to say that, but
Also to be a place of people seeking a safe place or seeking acceptance.
the sanctuary.
A sanctuary, yeah, in the broadest sense of that word.
God calls us to connect.
It's a great set of words. Any others, particularly from folks online, from Joan or Michael? No. Okay, if you had to pick one of these to put a star next to, pick one in your mind that just you would put a star next to. It doesn't have, you're not wedded to this, and this is just something we're gonna save and then file away for now, but if you had to pick one and put a star next to it, which would it be? There's some great words on this list. Anyone have yours? What's the one you would put a star next to? I picked sanctuary.
I like love.
Covers a lot of the area.
Yeah.
I would choose connect.
Connect. And how can
I'll
you
say the care.
care? Where did I put care? Care, yes, there it is.
I guess I would pick work.
I still come back to worship.
Okay, there we go. We'll see how this fits with others, things that we do together, and yeah, where we go from here. But we just wanted to take that time to do some initial brainstorming. So God calls GLC to love, worship, work, care, connect, and be sanctuary, I guess. The others are all verbs. But yeah, that works. Okay, we'll see. Shall we talk about homework? Reading
Yeah.
list?
I was gonna say, could you introduce us to what is either already or will soon be in the Google Drive? There
Yeah,
will
there are
be
a couple of things that will
folder
soon
of
be.
reading list or resources. After each meeting, I think I'll probably send out an email of what we are asking you to read. But as we go through this, we may add other articles or chapter scans or other things that, as it sparks interest and you have the time, could be helpful. I don't want to bog us down in reading, so focusing is a good thing. But
Yeah.
I think that especially for some of us who are doing this for the first time, having a lot of things available is going to be helpful, especially if we want to touch in on them later in the process.
Yeah, and this will change as we go on. So so here's our folder. You don't need to be able to read all of this, but I'm just going to give you a quick tour of what we've got in there so far and what we're inviting you to read. And we'll follow this up with an email, and there are a couple other pieces we'll add tomorrow to this. So here we have the pieces you've already received, today's agenda, and our outline from that's been shared previously. If you go to reading list resources, here we have, this is the chapter that I was talking about, strategic planning. It's just like 6 pages. So pretty simple, but gives a framework. And then go into this initial background. Typically when churches do strategic planning, a first step is to share some background on the congregation, nuts and bolts, and possibly like demographics of the area, things like that. We haven't added demographics of the area to this point. We're going to talk more about community pieces in the future. But here in this folder, you have a few quick snapshots that we thought might be helpful. And we're going to add a couple more. One is our budget year to date from our last council meeting. And this is a way of showing, budgets are value documents, right? And they show the organization, sorry, that's, but here you can see the budget categories when you look at it on your own computer, and you're able to see the budget categories and what we've spent, what's changed year over year the last couple of years, and how we're tracking according to budget. We can give you more of a financial picture too as we go along. Then we have the annual survey results, annual report survey. So we have to do an annual report to the denomination every year, and we send out a poll to the congregation the last few years. We don't get that many responses to this, like this was 13 or 14 responses. For a sense of awareness, our return readiness and COVID surveys that we sent out had on the order of 50 to 75 responses, which is really good because people don't often answer surveys, but particularly the written responses here do give some helpful feedback and insight. So that's worth taking a look at. And then this one, those ELCA annual reports create this document, which is our congregation trend report, which is publicly available to anyone who wants to look us up on the denomination. Shows our statistics from 2013 to 2020. Now this only tracks certain metrics. So it's a snapshot, but not the whole picture, but it may be interesting to look at, including attendance, financials, and other pieces as well. So you can see some of the changes that we've talked about. Additionally, added to this folder tomorrow will be a couple example church strategic plans. One that I've worked on before, or from a congregation I've served before, and then another 1 or 2 maybe that I've pulled that I think are full. Those are all from larger congregations. Maybe there's one that's kind of a similar size, but they're nicely formatted. They give you some ideas. We don't have to use any of those as a template, but it gives you a sense of and you could hold on to things maybe you like in there. So yeah.
So that's reading lists.
Mhm.
As we continue, we'll keep you updated of what's in there in case something that you read in an email sparks interest. I can think of other things that either as the council receives reports or other materials as we find them, like Chris Widener just emailed an article
Oh,
recently.
yes, right.
So I am in favor of like throwing everything in there, and just if you want to, are interested in
Right.
keeping up with what might be added to that folder eventually. So it is 2:30. So give me the 3 minutes of our actual next steps. As I said, today was a getting to know you and getting to know this project meeting. We did not make any progress on actually writing a strategic plan or gathering more information, and that's great. So what we're asking is to read the first chapter of that book that Pastor Brett scanned, and to reflect on what stood out for you from that, what questions you may have, what kinds of things you might want to take from it, or say like, that's not us, that's not who we are. And then to think, do some personal brainstorming, maybe like on your commute or while in the shower, like what kinds of information we want to get as we develop this, and how do we get them? There are many ways of gathering this kind of data. There are surveys, there are town halls, there are one-on-one interviews. Do we want to do one-on-one interviews just with like old, longtime congregation members, or maybe with other ministers of area churches? Do we want to send out like a general feedback collection
Or-
box at the start?
yeah.
Like there are many ways of-
Passersby on the street, or former members, or Georgetown community
Yeah.
key people. Yeah.
And I think having a more fulsome list that we can then look at all of it and say, like, based on what we want to come out with, I think these groups are most valuable to make sure we hit them in several different ways to get their feedback. These would be great as time allows, and these groups may not be as reflective of this project.
And part of the why on that is because we, in creating those goals and our mission strategic plan, thinking about, well, what is God calling us to? What are the needs in our community, or who are we in our community? So knowing a little bit about the landscape, how both congregation members and non-congregation members view us and seek from the church, and how the church serves. So,
Yeah. But I think it'll be important for our next meeting to have the lists of who's and hows and start matching those up, because some of those tools will be more appropriate for different audiences.
yeah, then we'll start planning how we execute those tools. I've got some templates of congregational surveys, of different ways of running these, of questions that are kind of best practices to ask and stuff like that. But think about these things first.
Yeah. So that's everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us on Memorial Day from here or from afar. Thank you, John and Michael, especially through the difficulties of either a time difference or the joys of being in a new home.
House. Yeah, Michael, praying for your new house. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have any questions about anything we talked about today? Thank you all.
May God lead us on. Amen.
Amen.
Good to see everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Peace.